I'll admit, I've been confused by the news this week. Not the things that have been in the news, but the reaction of the general public to those things. I mean, Joe Biden deciding to drop out from the race for president was treated as a shock. But why? Retiring is just what old people do. The only surprise is that it took the entire Democratic establishment to convince Grandpa it was time to move on into assisted living. The White House retirement villa will be a nice place for Biden to play shuffleboard and eat ice cream while he passes out the remainder of his lame duck period. Unfortunately, since Biden no longer drives, he had to pass the keys to that old Corvette in the garage over to Kamala Harris. What a sad state our politics are in when the best candidate the Democrats can muster has the brains of John Fetterman, the morals of Bob Menendez, and the charm of Hillary Clinton. It's going to be a long 3 months. I'm Tyler Chrestman. Welcome to the Chrestman Conversation. All right. Hello, everyone. Today on the podcast, in case you couldn't tell from the intro, we are going to be talking about Joe Biden stepping down from the race, and we're going to be doing a little bit of a deep dive into Kamala Harris because she is terrible, and I think many people have forgotten this. Judging by the internet, they're trying to reinvent Kamala Harris as some sort of great, iconic figure. She's awful. We're going to go into it. But before we get into that, first, my favorite comment of the week. I'm going to apologize in advance for the name. I don't know if this is a name or letters or what's going on, but the comment comes from Noswell6040, who said, "Great podcast. I would love to see the Daily Wire scoop you up on that one." Well, thank you, you kind individual. The Daily Wire would be lucky to have me. And with that, we're going to move to Biden is out. Now, as I said in the intro, why is anyone surprised? I wasn't surprised. I would have said, now, if you gave me money to place at the casino in Vegas and you had to say 2 weeks ago, Tyler, do you think Joe Biden is going to be the nominee? I would have said yes. I would have bet on yes. But it doesn't surprise me that the answer is no. I mean, that debate performance was so historically bad that I've never seen a nominee get run out of his own party so fast. It was unbelievable how the entire Democratic establishment just turned on him. That debate performance really shocked a lot of people because I think a lot of people who tuned into it didn't necessarily realize how much Biden has cognitively declined. And seeing it in person is different than seeing it in stories or not being aware of it at all. Many people just aren't connected to politics on a day-to-day basis. And if you're not, then maybe you didn't know how bad his decline has been. And seeing it for then shocked Democrats into action. They in a way that I've never seen before, ousted him. Not since Julius Caesar was assassinated by the Senate have we seen politicians turn on one another so quickly to throw someone under the bus. Joe Biden was forced out against his will in the most obvious way. He kept saying, I want to run, I want to run, I want to run, and everyone else said no. So I think it's funny because you've seen it in the past couple of days that there is an attempt right now to paint Joe Biden as some sort of altruistic figure that is doing it for the good of the country and the good of the Democratic Party, and he's putting party before self and all this. This is nonsense. Joe Biden is, as most people who run for president are, Joe Biden's a narcissist. To believe yourself capable of being the president takes an amount of narcissism that most people don't possess. He would hang on to power as long as he possibly could. The difference is that they basically got him in a room and told him the way it's going to be, and he had no choice but to step aside. Because when the people who actually run the Democratic Party turn against you, when the donor class turns against you, when it becomes clear that you're not going to win, and everyone in your own party and the other side thinks that you're going to lose, he had to step out. He had no choice. He didn't want to. You can see that because up until the day that they released the letter, he was saying, I'm in the race. I'm going to win. I'm the only person who ran against Donald Trump and beat him and blah, 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 all this nonsense. And it's true. He ran a race against Donald Trump that was due to COVID, suspect at best, and irregular at best, I should say. And he won. He won the election. Okay, fine. he wasn't going to do it again. It became so clear after the assassination attempt against Donald Trump, after the man took a bullet, Joe Biden was never going to win that race. I don't know who can, but we'll see. That's a question for later. What I find interesting is this idea that Joe Biden's doing this out of the goodness of his heart. No, he was run out. He was run out of the party. And it leads to a lot of questions because, I don't know if you can hear, Winnie is going crazy right now. She just ate. And I'm recording this at 8 o'clock. She eats at 8 o'clock, and then she just proceeds to yowl for about 10 minutes after her food is done. I don't know what her deal is. Anyway, so Joe Biden didn't do this out of the goodness of his heart. He didn't do this for his party. He didn't do this for anyone at all, really. He did this because they forced him to do it, and it leads to a lot of questions. Imagine this for a second. Joe Biden has tacitly admitted that he is not up to the job of running for president, which means he's not up to the job of being president for the next 4 years. That's what he is saying by his withdrawal from the race. He is admitting to the fact that he doesn't believe he is capable of being president for the next 4 years. By my calculation, all right, it is July 26th when we are recording this and when this episode will come out. So we have, let's do some math here. Let's count it out. We have July into August, September, October, November, December, and January. All right, we have 6 months. 6 months ahead of us. What makes me believe that Joe Biden is capable of being president for the next 6 months? If he's saying he can't run for president, wasn't the job of actually being president harder than running a campaign? You're not up to campaigning, but you're up to being president for the next 6 months? It's half a year. That's not an insignificant amount of time. This isn't 6 weeks. This is 6 months. You can't be president for the next 4 years, you're saying, with your withdrawal. Well, why can you be president at this particular moment? I don't understand this. He came out, Joe Biden gave an Oval Office speech where he addressed it, but he never talked about why he's not running. He didn't talk about the fact he's historically unpopular. He was polling as bad as any sitting president has ever polled, and he's in cognitive decline. He talked about none of this. He just said, I'm not going to run. Well, I think America is owed explanations. You say you can't run. I'm not saying it. You're saying you're not up for the task. You're not up for the job. Well, what makes me believe that you can be president for 6 more months? Why are we not talking about that more? Everything is all, the blame or the game has shifted. Everyone's talking about Kamala Harris. Everyone's talking about the vice president. But we're forgetting there's an actual president who's sitting right now behind the desk in the Oval Office making decisions for this country, and he's admitted that he is not cognitively with it enough to run for president. That's a big deal. This is what was her name? This is an Edith Wilson kind of deal. After Woodrow Wilson had a stroke and his wife basically ran the country without telling anyone. We've all been seeing that. On the conservative side, at least, people have been acknowledging that for the last year, the last 2 years, that Joe Biden might, in effect, be the president of the United States. And now we have to say, for the next 6 months, what happens? Is Biden really just going to sit there and pretend to be president and let everyone else pull the strings? Why are we not talking about the 25th Amendment? Actually, here, while we're thinking about this, let's just pull up the text. 25th Amendment. Let's pull up the text here, because this is one that confuses people. It clarifies that the vice president becomes president in the event that something happens to the president. So let's see here if we got the actual text here. So it says, in case of the removal of the president from office or of his death or resignation, the vice president shall become the president. Whenever there is a vacancy in the office of the vice president, the president shall nominate a vice president who shall take office upon confirmation by a majority vote of both houses of Congress. And then here's the section that is important. Section 3. Whenever the president transmits to the president pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives his written declaration that he is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, and until he transmits to them a written declaration to the contrary, such powers and duties shall be discharged by the vice president as acting president. What does that mean? That means if the president admits that he is incapable of doing his job, incapable of discharging the powers and duties of his office, that the vice president has the authority to become the acting president. There's another section here. It's a longer section. So this is the other section. This is a little longer, but we're going to read it anyway. Section 4. Whenever the vice president and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive departments or of such other body as Congress may, by law, provide, transmit to the president pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives their written declaration that the president is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the vice president shall immediately assume the powers and duties of the office as acting president. So, Section 4 is when, for example, let's say Joe Biden doesn't realize he can't discharge the powers, or he has a stroke. He's incapable of writing to the Senate himself and saying he can't do it. The Section 4 is where the vice president and the executive officers can say the president is unable to fulfill his duties. The vice president needs to take over. This is the section that is applicable too. Why are we not talking about this as a real possibility? Because if Joe Biden is unable to run for president, he can't be president. If Joe Biden can't be president, then he shouldn't be president. And if Kamala Harris is admitting that she is a better pick, why is she not acting president right at this particular moment? Why are we allowing this man in cognitive decline to make decisions for the country of 350 million people? It's a question that demands answers, and Joe Biden has done a terrible job of defending himself on his decision. First of all, his decision to withdraw came out in a PDF released on Twitter, X, formerly known as Twitter. There were people who were saying this man didn't even write that. I don't think he wrote it. He didn't sign it. It's got an electric-looking signature on it. And then he wasn't seen for 5 days, 4 or 5 days after the letter was released. People were speculating he was dead. And I was imagining some sort of Weekend at Bernie's type situation where they were going to put sunglasses, some aviators on the corpse of Joe Biden and have him sit in the window and wave or something. Because it's ridiculous. This is a giant decision that affects the entire country, and he released it in a PDF on the internet. Didn't do a press conference about it. Didn't take questions. Didn't release even a pre-recorded statement from the Oval Office. That's what Lyndon Johnson did when he decided not to seek re-election. He released a recorded, maybe it was live actually. It was a live statement from the Oval Office talking to the American people about his decision. It's a big deal that he decided not to run. And it demands answers to questions he doesn't want to be asked. So it's really a question of his capabilities moving forward. And we don't know the answer. I think actually we do know the answer. We all have witnessed with our own eyes the answer, which is that he's incapable of performing this job. But he needs to be held accountable. He needs to answer for that himself. And I doubt we'll see it anytime soon. So instead, it's going to be Kamala Harris. Lord help us. She's the worst. We're going to go through a little bit of her history, but this is wild to me. First of all, this is the part of electoral politics that I just find slimy and gross. Joe Biden says he will not seek re-election. Okay, that's his prerogative. He's allowed to do that, and he's allowed to make that choice. How is it that within an hour, within 2 hours, all of the Democratic establishment seem to endorse Kamala Harris, a lot of her biggest opponents even? People like Gavin Newsom, who obviously wants to run for president, Gretchen Whitmer. The Obamas came out and endorsed her. They took a little bit longer, but they've endorsed her. They put out a pre-recorded phone call thing. It was kind of cringy, but they did it. Joe Biden endorsed her. First of all, he forgot to in a statement. He had to do it a half hour later where it's like an afterthought, like, oh, yeah, and by the way, Kamala is great. I endorse her. But talk about the backroom deals. Nobody, no primary. 14 million people voted in the Democratic primary. Now, one person voted for Kamala Harris. Why is she the nominee? Who decided that? Why are we not having an open convention? Where's the people who want to defend democracy? Well, who picked her? Oh, the party picked her? Oh, okay. What about all the voters? Why not have a convention that's actually democratic from the party that claims to love democracy? Where are you? Why are you not doing this? What's happening? Where are all the people? Oh, is it because you realize that if you held an open primary, it would turn into a knife fight and you don't want to see it when your convention's already going to be a shit show because you're going to have a bunch of pro-terrorist sympathizers coming there and disrupting the event that you cater to, your base, your anti-Semitic base who hates American values and loves terrorism, apparently. You're going to have a terrible convention, and you also don't want to have a fight between Democrats, so the elites just get to pick the nominee. That's the way it works in the Democrat Party. No primary necessary. Kamala Harris gets it. Oh, okay, whatever. The backroom deals are shady and gross in politics. Clearly, Kamala Harris was plotting this. She wanted this. I have no nice words to say about Kamala Harris. She comes off as incredibly dishonest. She speaks in a word salad that makes Donald Trump look like Lincoln. But she's good at what she does, which is moving from an office that she fails in to a higher office. She went from deputy district attorney to San Francisco's district attorney to California's attorney general to senator to vice president, and she's done a bad job at every one of those jobs she was bad at, but somehow she manages to transform this into a better and bigger office. So it's kind of impressive in a way, even if she is bad at her job. Because let's go into her history a little bit. What do people know about her? All these people, and I'm going to be honest, it's a lot of white women. White women are ruining electoral politics with their terrible decisions right now. But the idea that a bunch of these white women are going to go out there and vote for Kamala Harris because, what, she's a woman? Who cares? She's terrible. She's bad at her job, which is the easiest job in the world as being vice president, and she's bad at it. She has a historically low unapproval rating for a vice president. Think about that for a second. Who dislikes the vice president? No one. No one cares. People dislike her because she's bad at her job. She can't speak. She's a terrible orator. She's a bad debater. She has good moments because when you cut around little things like her time in the Senate when she would grill Justice Brett Kavanaugh, and you go, well, when you take that little clip out of context and you don't know anything about it, you say, oh, look at her. She's so tough on these nominees. And you say, no, she's not. She's just as bad at this. And the only reason that they get frustrated because she goes about something she doesn't know. Have you ever talked to anyone at this law firm? And Kavanaugh has to go, what are you talking about? Well, I don't know. And she goes, oh, you can't answer the question, huh? And he goes, well, I'm under oath. I don't know who you're referring to. Do you have a person in mind? She said, well, you should know. That's not what? Looking for a perjury trap on a judicial nominee is a gotcha moment? What a joke. But people look at it, and when they don't know anything about anything, they say, oh, wow, look at her. She's so impressive. She really got him tripped up. No, she's ridiculous. And her history is full of just ridiculousness. She's done well at nothing. Her dad was some Marxist professor. Both her parents had PhDs from Berkeley, which is where she lived until she was a teenager. But then, so she lived in the most liberal place in all of America by two Berkeley PhD professor types. So think about her upbringing, what that means for her politics. Most people get their politics, inherit them from their parents. Obviously not everyone, but that's where most people get their politics from. When she was 12, though, they lived in Canada. She lived in a wealthy neighborhood in Canada up until after high school when she went to college in America at Howard University, a historically black university. And she acts like her life was filled with American racism, and she had to confront it, and she didn't even live in America when she was a teenager, and her entire upbringing was in the most liberal place in the entire country, and then she lived in Canada in an incredibly wealthy neighborhood in Montreal. She's never faced oppression like she pretends to be. Remember the busing story? Never in her life has she had to deal with the quote-unquote American systemic racism that she claims to have fought through. She's a joke. She never did this. She went to law school. She failed the bar, first of all, the first time. All right, fine. I mean, I guess people fail the bar. She failed it. So she went on. She did eventually pass the California bar, and she became a lawyer. So here's where all this stuff, where you grew up, who your parents are, you can't control these things. So no one can be held accountable for their parents' views or where they grew up. That's not their choice when they're a kid. But the first thing she did after she graduates law school is when you have to start taking some accountability for your own life. And how about in 1994 when she met Willie Brown? Willie Brown was 31 years older than Kamala Harris. I believe he was 60 and she was 29 when they began dating. He was married at the time, and they were dating. This is very openly acknowledged by Willie Brown in his own autobiography, as well as everyone else with eyes. He would take her around. He squired her around town. He introduced her to all sorts of people. He was the Speaker of the Assembly in California, I believe, when they met, but he was getting ready to run for mayor of San Francisco. And he was a big deal. Willie Brown was a big deal in California politics. They called him Slick Willie. Slick Willie was a big deal in California politics, and when he started dating this woman who was 30 years his junior, he then used his position as a big shot in California politics to appoint her to boards in California. So she was put on the Unemployment Appeals Board as well as the Medical Assistant Commission. I don't really know what these boards do exactly, but I know that she was paid $150,000 when adjusted for inflation for her position on these boards, where she didn't have to do anything and she only got the benefit. She didn't meet the qualifications, especially for the Medical Assistant Commission. She didn't meet any of the qualifications, but it was a well-paying gig, and she was dating Willie Brown. And apparently that's all the qualifications she needed to get paid $150,000. She made $400,000 over the course of, I think it was 4 years or 5 years while she dated, while she knew Willie Brown on those commissions that he appointed her to. I mean, are we going to talk about cronyism or possibly nepotism in this case, where you appoint not necessarily a family member, but someone you're dating to a prominent, affluent position with no qualifications? She's a lawyer, but they didn't need a lawyer. They wanted medical personnel for the medical commission. So she just got that on the benefit of sleeping with Willie Brown. These people dated for a year. Willie Brown acknowledged as much and said that his wife at the time, when he was getting ready to, I guess, win the election for San Francisco mayor, his wife got annoyed at the rumors of this girl. I guess she was okay with his philandering, his wife. But got annoyed by the rumors that Kamala Harris was going to be the next Willie Brown, Miss Willie Brown, I should say, and basically told Willie Brown, all right, you got to cut it down. You got to stop it. And so Willie Brown broke it off. That was it for him and Kamala after a year and some change. But this basically set her up for a political future as well as financially. Again, with a job that's paying $400,000 over the course of a few years, that's a pretty decent paying job for not any work. I think the medical commission met once a month and paid $150,000. So she benefited basically by sleeping with a powerful guy in California. Okay, these things happen. So then she wants to, she got a job as the deputy district attorney. She didn't stay there very long, and then decided to run for DA of San Francisco, which is a race that she won despite numerous ethics violations that resulted in the record-setting fine in the state of California for ethics violations during a campaign. It included spending more money than the cap, as well as trying to implant an undercover operator in the opposition's campaign for inside information. Talk about some Watergate type stuff. That's what Kamala Harris did. You can look that up. She's got it might still be the record. I'm not 100% sure, but it was at the time a record for ethics violations fines. So she wins it. She becomes San Francisco's district attorney, and she was incredibly bad at this job. She was incredibly lax on crime, but there's a way that she gamed the system. So imagine this. She wanted to act like her conviction rates were a lot higher than they were. So there's two ways to do this. You can increase your number of convictions or decrease your number of cases and keep the convictions the exact same. She did the latter, obviously. So they had, at the time when she became the San Francisco DA, there were 73 homicide cases. She made deals on 32 of them, and only had 15 convictions. So she only took a few of those cases to trial, but kept her conviction rate high because she just made plea deals with everyone who came to the table. And instead of sending people to jail for murder for a long time, she pled a lot of these down to lesser crimes and lesser jail time, so she didn't have to take anyone to trial. She dismissed over 1,000 drug cases because a lab technician was caught stealing cocaine, and rather than deal with the scandal, she just dismissed every case that was involved with the office to avoid her name in the papers. When she was the California Attorney General, she argued that they had the right to keep prisoners longer than their sentences because there were fires that were happening, and they used prisoners as firefighters, wildland firefighters in California. So she made arguments that the prisoners should actually be kept because they needed the cheap labor to fight fires in California. Does that sound like someone who's good at her job? They're going to just do that? She covered up evidence. Her office covered up evidence that would have released an innocent man from being killed on death row because it looked bad for her office. And they didn't do that until the court forced them to. This is something that Tulsi Gabbard brought up. She's terrible. She was bad at her job. She was a bad prosecutor. She was a bad district attorney. She was very bad on crime. She allowed crime to flourish. San Francisco, at the time when she was the district attorney, had the highest violent crime rate in California, which is one of the highest in the nation. And it was her city that had it. She was bad at that job, but she pretended like she was tough on crime. She's go out there and she'll say, I'm going to prosecute Donald Trump. She didn't prosecute anyone. She's bad at her job. She was always bad at her job. But again, she propelled this. She used this as a catapult to higher office. She became district attorney, set up a lovely PR department that made her look good, despite the fact that when you actually look into the numbers, she was very bad. Used this to become Attorney General of California in a very close race, and then used this to become senator. She has failed up at all of these jobs, doing nothing, accomplishing nothing along the way. Whoa. And not to mention that she is a radical in her policy. When she was running for president, for example, she advocated for Medicare for all. This is wild. This is a wild idea that is pie in the sky for many people who think that healthcare should be a right, but don't actually understand how money works or how the healthcare business would implode in the United States if we tried something like this. Not to mention, your taxes would just increase exponentially. Whatever you think you're spending on healthcare right now, double it. And then you go, oh, wow, this was a terrible idea. She's for that. She can't walk it back. She's for Medicare for all. She was the one who tweeted out links to the Minnesota Freedom Fund, which was a bail group during the 2020 George Floyd riots that bailed out violent criminals who then went on to commit more violent acts. She supported this. She said, everyone, go. The tweet's still up. This isn't a conspiracy theory. The tweet is still up, and you can find it on her Twitter, on her official Twitter page. The only promising moment she's had in her political career that I can recall and kind of enjoyed was when she implied Joe Biden was a racist during the run for president, where she said, oh, you like segregationists and you wouldn't have let little girls like me get bused to school. Again, this is nonsense. It's a falsifying of her history as though she was some civil rights icon. She wasn't. She lied, by the way. She plagiarized a story from Martin Luther King Jr. So you want to talk about a person who is bad. She said that one time her mom asked her a question about what she wanted, and she looked up and said, freedom. And this never happened. This comes directly from something Martin Luther King Jr. wrote about a police officer who stopped a young girl at a protest and asked her a similar question, and that's what she said. It wasn't Kamala Harris who said that. She stole a story from Martin Luther King Jr. It's wild that no one cares about these kind of things. It's crazy to me. How do you plagiarize Martin Luther King Jr. and get away with it? It makes no sense. I want to show you what I thought would be a highlight of Kamala Harris's forever, and hopefully we see a bunch more of. But who remembers when this is what happened? This was the moment I thought Kamala Harris should have been done forever on the political scene. Let's see if anyone remembers this. Anyone remember when Tulsi Gabbard absolutely wrecked her on the debate stage?
Congresswoman Gabbard, you took issue with Senator Harris confronting Vice President Biden at the last debate. You called it a, quote, false accusation that Joe Biden is a racist. What's your response?
I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Senator Harris, your response.
As the elected Attorney General of California, I did the work of significantly reforming the criminal justice system of a state of 40 million people, which became a national model for the work that needs to be done. And I am proud of that work. And I am proud of making a decision to not just give fancy speeches or be in a legislative body and give speeches on the floor, but actually doing the work of being in the position to use the power that I had to reform a system that is badly in need of reform. That is why we created initiatives that were about reentering former offenders and getting them counseling. It is why, and because I know that criminal justice system is so broken, that I am an advocate for what we need to do to not only decriminalize but legalize marijuana in the United States.
I want to bring Congresswoman Gabbard back in. Your response.
The bottom line is, Senator Harris, when you are in a position to make a difference and an impact in these people's lives, you did not. And worse yet, in the case of those who are on death row, innocent people, you actually blocked evidence from being revealed that would have freed them until you were forced to do so. There is no excuse for that. And the people who suffered under your reign as prosecutor, you owe them an apology.
Oof. All right, first of all, let's just acknowledge Tulsi Gabbard's the best, right? Like, Tulsi Gabbard is, I don't care who you are, Tulsi Gabbard's great. And I thought that was the end of Kamala Harris right there, because she was bad at attacking crime. She did a bad job. But she also failed as a progressive in all those areas that Tulsi Gabbard just listed. So when you say, where does Kamala Harris shine? It's nowhere. The progressives don't like her because she did idiotic things like the things that Tulsi Gabbard just listed. And the conservatives don't like her because she actually didn't prosecute crime. She just was incompetent. She was the Kim Gardner of San Francisco. And as an attorney general, how do you like her answer, by the way? When we talk about word salad, oh my God. It's wild to me that people think that this woman is capable of intelligent thought. She is terrible. How many times? What did she say? She gave absolutely no answer. She said, we did the work and we reformed it and we did the work and I'm proud of the work because we did it. And you go, what? You didn't list anything. What are you talking about? You did absolutely nothing and you can't list anything, and it makes no sense. Hold on, I'm trying. Oh my God. Oh, get that out of my ears. And it makes no sense that you think, for example, that you have accomplished anything. What can you point to? She lists nothing. She talks for 30 seconds and just says reform and the work multiple times without giving any examples because she has no examples. And this should have been the end of her political career because she was up there and she showed herself to be a woman without substance. Okay, that's fine. How about this? I'm going to just come out and say it. The only reason she was picked to be vice president is because of DEI. And don't listen to me. Don't take my word for it. Why don't you listen to Joe Biden?
I committed that if I'm elected president, have an opportunity to appoint someone to the courts, I'll appoint the first black woman to the courts. It's required that they have representation now. It's long overdue. Secondly, if I'm elected president, my cabinet, my administration will look like the country. And I commit that I will, in fact, I'll pick a woman to be vice president. There are a number of women who are qualified to be president tomorrow. I would pick a woman to be my vice president.
Just to be clear.
So don't listen. Don't take my word for it. Take Joe Biden's. She got picked because she's a woman. And in another interview with Joy Reid, he said a black woman. He said, I have 4 black women on the list. So she's a failure. She is picked. She has no qualification. She does nothing well. She can't speak. She can't write. She can't think. She has failed in every job, in every capacity that I can find of. We forgot that she's supposed to be the border czar. How's that going? But she continues to fail upward. And that's all it takes sometimes. That's all you need to do in life is fail upward. And so she is dangerous. She is dangerous because of this. I can't list an accomplishment of hers of something that's good. Oh, she's the first female vice president. Okay, well, that's great. But what did she actually do? Why was she picked? What has she done as vice president that's good? Name one thing. Without talking about her gender or her race, what's an accomplishment to Kamala Harris's name? You can list the positions she's won. Okay, what has she done with those positions? What are the things that she's done? She's won some elections. Okay, I don't care. What has she done with the positions? Can you name a thing that you're happy that she has done and advocated for and fought for and done well? I can't. I don't know. Trying to be charitable, I just don't know the answer. But Republicans cannot be complacent because this is a woman who has demonstrated, despite her just endless inadequacies, she fails up. That's sometimes all you need in life, and she can do it. So Republicans need to work hard. This is a harder race than Joe Biden. She can lean into the fact that she's a woman, and she can lean into the fact that she's black, and people will vote for her because of this. It's sick. It's gross that people want to vote for people because of their gender or their race, but they will. They will do that. And there's something Republicans are going to have to push back against. They're going to have to figure out a way to make everyone see who this person really is. Kamala Harris is a bad person. She's done a bad job at all of these jobs. She is dishonest. She's adulterous. She is no good. And we don't necessarily want her in a position where she has to talk in this word salad. And I hate to do this to you. I hate to do this to the loyal listeners of the Chrestman Conversation, but I'm going to make you listen to this. I'm going to make you do it. Here she is. Here's our potential next president of the United States. Have fun. Have fun with this.
And when folks vote, they order what they want, and in this case, they got what they asked for.
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day. Every day it is time for us to agree.
Talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time. I am here, standing here on the northern flank, on the eastern flank, talking about what we have in terms of the eastern flank and our NATO allies.
It is a country in Europe. It exists next to another country called Russia. Russia is a bigger country. Russia is a powerful country. Russia decided to invade a smaller country called Ukraine. So basically that's wrong.
What a summary.
We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't know.
We must together work together to see where we are headed, where we are going, and our vision for where we should be, but also see it as a moment, yes, to together address the challenges.
We have the ability to see what can be, unburdened by what has been, and then to make the possible actually happen.
What is at stake at this very moment? What is at stake this very moment are some of the guiding principles around the NATO alliance.
As it relates to what we need to do domestically as well as what we need to do in terms of this issue generally, we have, as the President said, reevaluated what we're doing.
Based on what we've just been able to see, and because we've seen it or not doesn't mean it hasn't happened. But just limited to what we have seen.
She looked like she even confused herself on that last one. All right. Anyway, we're running long on time here. I'm going to leave it there. I hope you guys enjoy that. All those words of wisdom from Kamala Harris. And I hope you guys enjoy the episode. And if not, well, too bad. I don't know what to tell you. I try my best. But I'll catch you guys next Friday.